going to give you some bonus content on Ecclesiastes, latest book, 10 years in the making. I'll tell you the wild backstory. Meaningless Life, Life Lessons from Ecclesiastes. But before I jump in, and everybody's welcome to view the content, but I think I'm going to focus primarily on the guys since it's written by Solomon, one of the most famous and or infamous men in the history of the world. But here's where we're at today. If you've not seen this, this is my home office. I've got a cool studio set up, and I'm surrounded with a pretty epic, massive, killer library everywhere. And yeah, so it's books all the way around. Like, I don't know, 6,000 books on the Library of Congress searchable database, plus logos and laptop. And yeah, I've got a lot of books. I'm a nerd. And so, yeah, this is my home office and study. It smells like cedar. The ceiling is cedar. I don't think I can show you that. A buddy of mine has a cedar. Well, there you go. Cedar mill. There we go. It's really fancy. They built this studio for me off of our old dining room table, and I could just hit buttons and do whatever I need. So that's what we're doing today. Welcome to my house. Welcome to my study. Welcome to where I do whatever it is that I do. So my latest project is a book called Meaningless Life, and it's life lessons from Ecclesiastes. And so let me start with the backstory. I want you to get, it's a very readable, not super nerdy, very, very practical, verse by verse walk through the book of Ecclesiastes. And I'll start by giving you kind of the backstory on the project. And so the book of Ecclesiastes is one of those books of the Bible that you've probably never heard in church because most pastors just don't know what to do with it. And it starts meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher. Everything is meaningless. And most pastors are like, what is the purpose of life? Well, life is meaningless. It's hard to know what to do with that. So I'll get into the theme in a little bit. But the backstory is I really became enamored with the book in college. God saved me at the age of 19 and started reading and studying the Bible. And I was reading through the Bible and I hit Ecclesiastes. I was like, this one's different. Like this is just out of left field. This is like those moody, arty, emo kids who are wearing black and, chain smoking and speaking in poetic phrases and just kind of odd and dark and eccentric and elusive. And so I became very interested in Ecclesiastes. The first book of the Bible that I actually tried to preach as a senior pastor, this is my 30th year as a senior pastor, was the book of Ecclesiastes, and it was in the People's Republic of Seattle, up in the north left, part of Washington. And I was trying to reach young punk rock, avant-garde, goth kids during the time of like grunge, like Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains, Mudhoney, all that kind of punk rock, alt rock, grunge revolution. And these kids were all dark and morose and moody. A lot of them were homeless street kids and runaways. A lot of them were musicians and college kids. And so we started with a night service. I think it was 6 p.m. I want to say. I don't even know if we had childcare. I think my mother-in-law actually helped. We just had a couple of kids. It was all like college punk rock kids. And so I told them, hey, we're going to do Ecclesiastes. I'm going to teach through Ecclesiastes. Set it up how you want. So they set up, it looked more, now in retrospect, like it looked like some sort of witch's den. It was like candles, lights out, all black, everybody in the band wearing black, very moody, very morose, avant-garde songwriters, very dark, very ethereal, and punk rock kids I said, we'll have a reading here at this point in the service. I thought they would pick, a Bible verse. They didn't. They picked atheistic philosopher Nietzsche's book, The Madman. So the reading at my first full church service as a senior pastor was not the Word of God. It was Nietzsche's The Madman. And I got up to teach on Ecclesiastes. And I tried to teach through the book of Ecclesiastes late at night, surrounded by candles to a bunch of punk rock kids. And let's just say it didn't go well. As I got into the book, I realized I am in way over my head, way, 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 way over my head. And I don't think I finished the book. I think I might have tried and then just surrendered and kept studying the book. And then the book really clicked, made sense for me about 10 years ago. And I'll tell you the backstory. So I had been a senior pastor for like 18 years, did college ministry for 2 years. So about 20 years, I was doing ministry in urban Seattle, least church city in the United States of America, more dogs than kids. And everybody was young and gay and progressive, and now what we would call woke. And so the college kids in cities like that were actually a generation ahead. They were more brainwashed, more woke, more progressive, more secular. And they're the ones that have sort of now gotten into politics and law and professorships and positions of influence to create what we would call woke culture within the church. It would be the deconstructionists and the apostates, and these were my people. And then we had a lot of conflict surrounding my ministry as a Bible teaching pastor who is more prophetic. Not that I'm giving you books of the Bible, but God made me as a hammer, and I pound nails for a living. And if something is sticking up like liberalism or progressivism or transgenderism or universalism, I am a hammer, and God made me as a hammer. And my job is to pound that nail back into place and get it in line. And so this led to decades of conflict, led to, in the end, uprising, church split, usual church fight, now taken to the internet, all kinds of drama. Pickets, protests, death threats, bulletproof vests, safe rooms at the house, moving all the time, chaos for the children, total craziness. And I went to the legal governing board over me and said, please inspect everything, get some audits. I'm being falsely accused. I know I've never done anything disqualifying in my entire life, and I'm fit for ministry. There's some things I've said and done, particularly as a young man, that I would regret, but I've repented of and not repeated. So whatever you want. And they said, they did a full investigation. You're welcome to come back. And so my wife and I agreed to come back. And then God spoke to us separately in different ends of our home, said we were released, and told me a trap was set. We need to resign immediately. And so we'd agreed to come back and continue in the ministry we had. And then God released us. So we resigned in total, complete faith. No job, no plan, just here we go. Well, then we ended up living in Seattle for a bit so our oldest daughter could graduate. Then we moved to Arizona, and a large tree fell on our house, sheared the bedroom off our house. If we were home on Saturday morning, my wife and I would be dead. This is all in the book. I think it's the preface, and we show a photo of all of this so you can see it for yourself. And so I was like, okay, I'm in my mid 40s, or maybe early 40s. I'm canceled. I'm unemployed. I'm in another state with no friends or family. All my equity is tied up in the house that now has been destroyed by a tree. Had we been there, my kids would be orphans. My wife and I would be dead. My reputation is wrecked. I don't even think at that time I had access to my own social media because I'd been locked out by my own team. I don't know if that was intentional or unintentional. I don't know. And I remember just thinking, okay, what the heck do I do now? I got kids, elementary, middle school, high school, college, and if you're a man who's lived for a period of time, you've hit these seasons where you're like the bottom falls out, and you're like, I don't know what the heck to do. I don't know how to survive. I don't know how to lead my family. I don't know how to provide. I had a lot of anxiety, a lot of isolation, and I went back to the book of Ecclesiastes, and the book of Ecclesiastes really became a North Star for me in the most dark, difficult, devastating season of my life. And so I started studying Ecclesiastes again, the book that had kicked my shrink to fits, a couple decades earlier. But now I'm a little bit older. I'm in my 40s, and I'm reading it, and it says meaningless, meaningless. Everything is meaningless. And I'm sitting there unemployed, canceled, can't, don't have a job. All my equities tied up in my home. I can't pre-qualify for a loan because I'm unemployed and my house is destroyed. All my possessions are in the destroyed home. Now I've got, deer and birds and squirrels in my house, and my kids are crying, and my other daughter went to another country to get a break. And I'm just like, okay, meaningless, meaningless. This book suddenly starts to take on some new light.
Best book I ever wrote on Ecclesiastes, right here. Everything is meaningless. I wrote it 10 years ago while I was canceled, lost my platform, quit my job, moved my family halfway across the country. A tree fell on my house, and the feces and fan of my life officially interfaced. I sat down, and I want to help you learn about the meaninglessness of life so that you can have a meaningful life.
So I sat down kind of as a personal devotional exercise to just work through Ecclesiastes. And I recorded into a simple microphone. There's no video because I had no team or technology. I was sitting when I did that in a little guest house next to a pool. We were renting this place. It was not awesome. And it had this janky pool that bunnies kept committing suicide by jumping in it. So I'd have to fish them out. And there was this little house, little shanky room next door. It wasn't a house, just a little room. And I would go in there, usually with the dog, the German Shepherd, who was, sweating to death and shedding. And I would just kind of write out my study of Ecclesiastes and pray, and then verbal process on the mic. And it was kind of my just devotional way of working through Ecclesiastes. I wasn't sure it would ever see the light of day. I didn't have a ministry or distribution or anything massive at that time. And 10 years later now, we're releasing it. And it's unedited. It's what I put down 10 years ago. And just to help you men in particular, this should be helpful to anyone, but especially to men, as the leader, you and I, we carry additional burden of responsibility. We just do. To provide for our family, to protect our family. In this season, I felt like a total abject failure. I was not providing, and I couldn't protect them from all the danger and harm that had come our way. I had lived with a lot of anxiety in fight or flight mode, pretty much fight mode for 2 decades. And I just finally reached the point where God told me the fight was over and it was time to walk away. And if I'm honest with you, I felt like as a man, I had lost the biggest war, the biggest battle, the most important conflict of my life. I felt like I lost. And I don't like being a loser. I like being a winner. I don't like being weak. I like being strong. I like overcoming. I don't like being overcome. And so as a man, it was very disorienting for me. And maybe that makes sense to you. Now I got to pick up the pieces of what's left of our shattered life and try and lead my family. But I'm feeling the weight of responsibility in a way that my wife and kids, they carry some of it, but they don't understand the full weight of it. And I remember telling my wife, I was like, how are you doing? She's like, this is a lot. I'm overwhelmed. We're trying to get the kids in school. I don't know where we're going to live. I said, yeah, I'm worried about income and revenue and providing for the family, housing the family. I wasn't even thinking I'd be a senior pastor or do ministry again. I thought I was done. And she's like, yeah, don't worry about that. That's your responsibility. And theologically, that's true. But emotionally in the moment, I just felt like a swell of anxiety, like, oh my gosh, like I am the backstop for my family. Like my whole family's walking on a tightrope and I'm the net underneath. And if they fall, I got to catch them. Like I got to figure out what's going on here. And so Ecclesiastes was really, really helpful because it is written by a guy who had lived his life and made some mistakes and was reflecting back on it. It says at the end of Romans that the things that were written prior were written for our instruction. So Romans is looking back at the Old Testament, which would include Ecclesiastes, and saying, this is written so you can learn from the examples of other people. Someone I know, a pastor, he says, let other people pay your dumb tax. Everybody's got a dumb tax to pay. You can pay it or let somebody else pay it. Tell me how you messed up, and then I don't have to do that. So Solomon is the wisest man on the earth up until Jesus Christ. And he goes on a fool's errand and he pays our dumb tax and he tells us what makes life meaningful, valuable, purposeful, what makes life meaningless, worthless, and purposeless. That's the project that he undertakes in Ecclesiastes. And so it's written about 1,000 years ago. And what Solomon does is he intentionally experiments with everything that you and I, as men, we would be tempted by. I'm reminded there's an old Puritan. He wrote a book called Precious Remedies Against Satan's Devices. I think it was Thomas Brooks. And in that book, he uses an analogy of fishing. And the analogy of fishing is that Satan knows for each of us kind of what proverbial bait would be most tempting, most enticing for us. You're like, I'm doing fine until I see that, or I can have that, or I can experience that, and then I'm in serious trouble. And so what Satan does, he baits the hook for each of us with whatever bait we will find most tempting and enticing, and he always hides the hook. And so for one man, it may be sex. For another man, it may be fame. For another man, it may be knowledge. For another man, it may be pleasure. For another man, it may be power. For another man, it might be dopamine hits from drugs or alcohol or gambling or whatever the case may be. So you've got your hook, I've got my hook. And on it, Satan puts your bait and he puts my bait. And so what Solomon decides is he's just going to spend his life taking all the bait. So he goes and he tries money and wealth. He's so loaded, it's unfathomable, that he wants wisdom, so God gives it to him. And wisdom is a supernatural gift of the Holy Spirit, who is, quote, the spirit of wisdom, according to the Apostle Paul. He's so knowledgeable, so wise, such a great problem solver, so helpful, such a tremendous coach that political leaders, kings and queens, come to him from the nations of the earth, and they bring him fleets of ships, the Bible says, filled with gold and ivory. I mean, you're a king and you rule a kingdom, and now other kings and queens are bringing you fleets of ships filled with gold and ivory just for you. So money, he's in a category where, like, he's at Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, kind of level of income. He's there. He's the richest man you could conceive. Also, fame. Some of us are tempted by fame, and that's the bait that Satan puts on the hook. Well, he was famous. He was known worldwide as this brilliant man, wisdom beyond measure. So he's like the Stephen Hawking of his day as well. People from around the world who were the most brilliant leaders, they have problems they can't solve. They have decisions they can't determine. So they come to him and he's like, I got this. This is like the kid in school back when I was growing up. There was something called the Rubik's Cube. And in school, all of us were trying to figure out how to put the stinking Rubik's Cube together. And there was always one kid that had figured it out. And everybody'd bring him the Rubik's Cube and he'd just put it together, put yours together. Solomon was that guy. The kings and the queens of the nations of the earth, they all bring him their Rubik's Cube and they're like, we can't get it together. He's like, do this, do that. He was a genius. And it made him famous, incredibly famous, to where he was known worldwide in a day when there wasn't technology, in a day when it was hard to learn about somebody who lived in another country, but everybody knew about him. As far as power goes, he had all kinds of power. He had political power. He's the king of a nation. He had spiritual power. He's anointed of the Holy Spirit, and he builds the temple for God. He's writing books of the Bible. He's got military power. He lives in a peaceable kingdom. He rules and reigns for 40 years of peace. Now, just think about it right now. Think about how powerful you've got to be to rule and reign for 40 years. I mean, even our presidents, they just get 4-year terms. And imagine sustaining your leadership for 40 years. That'd be 10 presidential terms, during which there's nothing but peace and prosperity, and there's no insurrection or revolt because you're such a fantastic king and things are going so well that for 40 years you just get the job. I mean, that is power and also pleasure. He says at one point, he says, "With my mind still with me." So this was so the weird thing about Solomon, he does all these sinful, self-destructive things as this wise man who builds the temple for God and writes 3 books of the Bible. But he does so. He says he keeps his mind. So he's not lost his mind. He's not a madman. He's methodical. He's intentional. And he is looking and seeing all of the different proverbial temptation bait that Satan puts on various hooks. And he decides intentionally, I'm going to go try all of them to a degree that other men have never even had a possibility. And I'm going to see if any of them really satisfies, because the whole modus operandi of temptation is something is going to feel good. It's going to give you a dopamine hit. It is going to meet some longing or desire that you have. And then the lie is that it's going to satisfy you, which it never does. And so Solomon says at one point, he says, with my mind still with me, I'm paraphrasing, he said, I thought to myself, I'm going to try pleasure. So he decided that he would undergo this radical experiment with his life where he just wouldn't say no. Anything that was pleasurable, he just said yes. So he's the guy, he gets up in the morning and they're like, would you like whiskey for breakfast? Yes, I would. Would you like a 4th dessert? Yes, I would. He had 700 wives, 300 concubines. That's 1,000 women that lived at his house. They would have all been competing for his affection, all seeking to meet his desires, whatever they may be, all seeking to get pregnant with his baby so that they could have an heir of the king, which means that he has enough women that he has living in his house that are just his women. I mean, 1,000 women that he could have had breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day for a year and never eaten with the same woman twice. All right, you're my breakfast gal. What are you going to do to blow my mind? And if so, maybe we'll have lunch. If not, I got another gal coming for lunch. I mean, this is a really nasty, nefarious, situation. But before we jump on Solomon and judge him, let's just be honest that pornography allows men to assemble a harem bigger than Solomon. You can grab your phone and you can have 700, wives and 300 concubines or 1,000 women within a few minutes, and you don't have to house them, feed them, provide for them, or even know them. So our day is a lot like Solomon, where it is in history past that you had to be a king to get a harem. And today, to get a harem, you just need a phone, which is shocking and horrifying and terrifying and troublesome. Nonetheless, imagine the pleasure. You're the king. Nobody could tell you no. You got 1,000 women. They're all willing to compete to be the winner of whatever this version of The Bachelor is. You've got more gold and silver than you know what to do with. And so you have every single pleasure. So this is the experiment of Solomon. And he comes to the conclusion that it's not worth it. He actually comes to the conclusion that if a man lives for money, fame, power, pleasure, the thing that pretty much all men live for, it's a wild goose chase, but there's no goose. It's like climbing a ladder, but the ladder's on the wrong wall. Even if you get to the top, you realize, oh, this was a waste of time and energy. That's what he determines. So at the end of so the big idea is this. The The greatest danger to you is you. The greatest threat to you is you. The person most likely to destroy you is you. Individually, this is true of men and women, but for purposes of our sort of time together here, trying to be a helpful friend at my house, men self destruct. We do. A lot of guys are like, I'm worried about the government. I'm worried about invasion. I'm worried about the economy. Let me say this: the guy you meet every morning when you brush your teeth in the mirror, that's your greatest threat. He's your greatest danger. If you don't have dominion over yourself, you're going to self destruct. The fruit of the Spirit is self control. And if we don't have self control, the result is that we're out of control and we self destruct. I have seen this over and over and over and over and over. One of the tragic aspects of being a senior pastor is you get a front row seat to the best and worst days of people's lives. I personally had friends of mine who, as men, they lost hope for their future and vision, and they killed themselves. They killed themselves. I personally know men who decided in sort of their midlife crisis that they were going to reward themselves for all the years of serving in church and going to work and paying the bills and doing the right things, that finally it was me time, and you do you and find your truth, and you know God wants me to be happy, and all this other nonsense from the father of lies. And they went after younger women. Usually this looks like a guy who's 50 getting two 25-year-old girlfriends, dating gals that are the age of his daughters. This includes, drinking and carousing. Sometimes this leads to drug use. This can include lots of gambling, reckless behavior for dopamine hits, or just abdicating all responsibility and just living life on vacation and golfing and just trying to find women with no discernment and father wounds and sleep with them. And so I've been there at the dining room table repeatedly when men have told their wives and kids, yeah, I've not been faithful. I've walked away from the Lord. I've been doing some nasty stuff. I finally got caught. And, yeah, here's the grenade. I've pulled the pin. Let me get in my truck and drive away. And good luck with the damage that's going to be done now for generations. And so Solomon ends his book. And now here is the conclusion of the matter: fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. And so, and what's weird is I haven't really delved into Ecclesiastes for 10 years. I'm just kind of verbal processing because I studied Ecclesiastes so deeply that it's just in my heart and it's in my mind. And I related to Solomon because in that season of my life, I was needing to make some decisions. And that is, what am I going to do to rebuild my life? Well, number one, am I going to rebuild my life? Am I just going to sit there in the brokenness that was my life and family and just wallow in it and just say, well, I worked hard for 20 years and it all got blown up, so I guess I'm just going to sit here and throw a pity party for the rest of my life? I could have gotten very bitter and jaded and, stayed on the internet and fighting all my critics and enemies and defending against all the lies and pushing back. And that's not true. And digging up documents and getting lawyers and going to war. It's like, I don't think that's going to do it. I could have self-destructed. You know what? Like, hey, I've worked hard. It's time for some pleasure. I could have cheated on my wife. I could have found corrupt ways to generate revenue. I could have self-destructed. And honestly, my greatest fear at that time was I can't self-destruct, man. Like, my wife and kids are dependent on me. Like, I got to make it. And so Ecclesiastes and Solomon was a warning. It's like fame is a dead end. Pleasure is a dead end. Wealth is a dead end. Power is a dead end. At this point, you can't go forward into any of those cul-de-sacs. You've got to go up, you got to find God, and you got to fear God and keep his commandments. And so for me, it really was like, I need to start with a deep and profound fear of God as a man personally. Because even if I'm doing something I'm not supposed to be doing and nobody knows, God knows. Furthermore, you know, I just came to the conclusion where it's like, whatever the rest of my life looks like, I have to begin with the fear of the Lord, obedience to the Lord. And I got to trust what Solomon is saying. And that is that all of these temptations, all of this bait that is hanging on these hooks, it's just Satan up there in his boat seeking to reel me in, club me over the head, and destroy me and my family. So Ecclesiastes kept me from a midlife crisis, is what I'm telling you. Ecclesiastes helped keep me from adultery. Ecclesiastes kept me from self destructive behavior. Ecclesiastes kept me from just pouring drinks and chasing chicks and being an idiot. Um, and at that time, I had total privacy, meaning I didn't have a staff. I didn't have a regular job. I lived in another state. There was no one watching me. But God was, and my family was counting on me. And so Solomon telling me, hey, I've done sex. That's not going to satisfy. I've done power. I've done fame. I've done wealth, been there, done that to a degree that none of us men have the capacity or opportunity to. And he's like, it's all just a waste of time and effort. It doesn't satisfy and it doesn't last. I was like, okay. So I took his words to heart. Now, here's the conclusion of the matter: fear God and keep his commandments. Like, okay, I fear God and I'm in the word. I'm like, Lord, what do you want me to do and not do? That was 10 years ago. It was the lowest point in my whole life. 10 years later, it's wild. I can't even believe my life. Like my wife and I, she's in the other room, faithfully married. I adore her. She's my favorite person, my dearest friend through it all. My girl still loves Jesus and is at my side. She is amazing. Um, right outside this door is Bop Bop's playground. There's turf, an awning, there's sand around the outside for play area. It's gated. There's a little water slide park set up right now with misters and sprinklers, and it's all set up for the grandbabies. I got 4 grandkids and more on the way, and they come over to Bop Bop and Nana's house, and so I set up the youngest playground outside my office, and then I'm going to build out the remainder of the property as the kids get older every year for Christmas. My pledge and plan is I'm going to build the next part of the yard for the next, life stage of kid. And so that's Bop Bop's playground. And so on Sundays, the grandkids all come over and they play with Bop Bop and Nana. And, and it'll be this week, it'll be in my toddler water slide park. All 5 of our kids love and serve Jesus. They planted a church together called Trinity and run a ministry called Real Faith that you're tuning into. Our kids that are older, the 3 are all happily married and have kids. And our younger 2 are walking with Jesus and in college and preparing to launch. Online, I am reaching a lot more people than any time in my entire life. A lot. The goals that we set for this year at Real Faith for reach and social and impressions, we beat them in the first 6 months. We beat our annual goals in 6 months. We just launched a bulletproof app. We're opening a new headquarters. I'll share some of that later. The church has outgrown the building, so I'm on a real estate hunt. We baptized, I think, 420 people in the last few months. Like, it's wild. And I've known other pastors and leaders that their life cratered and it fell apart and everything broke, and they either disappeared, died, or self-destructed, deconstructed their faith, blew up their family, wrecked their legacy. I think for me, what I've learned is what Satan uses to destroy you, God will use to deliver you if you fear God and keep his commandments. So, in the next episode, we'll get a little deeper into Ecclesiastes and the message therein. But it's written by an older guy who screwed up some of his life and made some bad decisions and is telling us not to do the same. So, think of it like an older man that everybody knows because he's so famous. And he's like, hey, son, let me tell you, boys, this is how I screwed everything up. Don't do it like this. That's Ecclesiastes. And it's really helpful. If you're a young man, it'll save you from misery. If you're a guy who's middle aged, looking at your crisis, let's avert it. And if you're an older guy like me with grandkids, it'll allow you to finish your race well and not trip over your own feet in the red zone. So, I'll leave it at that. God bless you. I'll come back in a bit and I'll do another part. I think I'm going to try and do 4 of these, and I hope they're helpful to you. So thanks for tuning in.
I wanted to personally thank you, just a moment. Thank you for allowing me to come into your life, into your home, into your mind, into your heart, into your soul, into your relationship with God. I take that as a very sacred honor. And I love being a pastor and I love teaching the Bible. And I just feel very, very grateful that I live in a day when there's technology so that we can talk and I could do my best to help you learn God's word. So I want to say thank you for that and also invite you to partner with us. We are a ministry, like all ministries. People are gracious to give generously, and that allows us to get Bible teaching out to more people than ever. I'm kind of shocked, to be honest with you, at how far Bible teaching is going and how gracious God is being. And I wanted to thank you for being part of our ministry family. And if you're not already giving, would just personally invite you to consider doing so that you could help us get this Bible teaching to more people and we can serve them as well. So thanks in advance.